Hey everybody, Manga Mike here. So for those of you who have not been on my channel yet, I am an amateur artist and amateur writer, and I'm trying to make it big. So I like to post videos just on my progress along the way, and I also like to give tips. So if that's something that you want to join in on, please feel free to subscribe. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 different tips or 5 different ways to improve your middles. Let's get started. So the first point I think is like the most important. It's kind of my secret sauce, right? So use the yes, but, no, and sequence, right? And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So it's yes, but at what cost, no, and things just got worse. So for instance, if we have a main character and this character doesn't feel respected at all within their village, and there's also this like magical sword that's inside of a rock that nobody's been able to pull for centuries. So this character feels, maybe if I pull this sword out of the rock, everybody in my village will now respect me and look up to me instead of looking down on me. So your character can't just go and pull the sword out of the rock and everybody in the village is now, oh, they're my hero, and the story ends. It's a very boring story. So what you might want to do is you would say, yes, the character pulled the sword out of the rock, but the rock, or the sword, the magical sword was actually sealing away a demon within that rock. And that demon used to wreak havoc on the village for millennia before a great sorcerer sealed it away, right? So, yes, the character pulled the sword out, but now they released this demon that's going to wreak havoc on the village. So not only does this character not get the respect, but now the character is also going to be more hated by the village. So that's an example of a yes, but. So let's do a no, and things got worse. So, no, the character did not pull the sword out of the rock, and it was a rainy day. So the character's hand slipped off of the sword, the end of the sword, and they fell and broke their arm. Right? So now they have to heal up and then figure out, why can't I pull this sword out of the rock? I have trained myself up enough to where I should have the strength to do it. So now they have to go on an adventure to a destination in a faraway land in order to get guidance from an old sorcerer or something like that, right? So that's an example of a no, but things got worse, right? Now they have to wait for their arm to heal. It's going to be longer before they feel like people are going to respect them. And now they also have to go on this other journey in order to seek guidance that they hadn't sought out before. So that is a way that you could use this method, and it's really, really good for spicing things up, because you never want to just oh, there's a goal, they accomplished the goal is now over, or whatever. Or no, they failed the goal and they never tried the goal again. Those things they're not really fun to see and look at and hear about and read. So that's a good way to kind of spice things up. Now, before I get to point 2, I want to say there is a great video on middles that I'm actually going to put down below. It's been a really long time since I've actually watched this video from start to finish, but I do think that I studied the video and took some points away and put it in a Google Doc that I'm referring to as I'm going through this video. So I'll make sure I post that. It's by McKay and Gray. They have a fantastic YouTube channel. They're great people, so I definitely recommend this video and their channel. But now, number 2. Your plot points should be, your major ones at least, should be plotted out before you try to do, your middle of the story. Why is that? Some people are like pantsers, right? It's like a phrase for people that just like to have a creative process in which they just kind of make an entire story up as they go. A lot of pantsers, though, they at least have a general idea as to where they want their story to go. It just might be the stuff in between isn't quite plotted out. I would recommend that you have a beginning plot, thought out. It doesn't have to be excruciating detail, a middle, and an end, right? So, for instance, you could do those things and parts in the middle too. Between the beginning and the middle, you should have one, and between the middle and the end, you should have another point of interest, I guess, plotted out. So, for instance, in this example that I gave you with the sword, you already have a beginning, you have a middle, and now you have an end, right? And the beginning is, you have a character who isn't respected within their town and they want respect, right? The middle is they pull out the sword, right? And the sword was sealing away a demon. So now the end can be they defeat the demon, right, with the magical sword. So now you have to figure out what the plot points are in between, and I actually gave you a possibility for that between the beginning and the middle, which could have been, the character attempted to pull the sword out of the rock but fell and broke their arm, and now they are seeking guidance from another, like a sorcerer, in order to figure out what they can do in order to pull this sword out while also rehabbing their arm. So that could be the point in between the beginning and the middle, and now the point between the middle and the end could be, the sorcerer, upon, telling them, oh, you can pull this sword out with the magic I just taught you, but you're going to need to come back to me in order to figure out how to defeat, or how to actually properly utilize the sword once you pull the sword out, right? And they ignore that, so now in between the middle and the end, that's going to be another plot point. They have to travel back in order to learn battle skills with the sword in order to beat the demon, or something like that, right? So now you have your 5 points plotted out. Why is that really important? The reason why it's important is because you have to have at least general guidance in order to properly utilize my secret sauce that I talked about for my first one, right? The yes, but, no, and method. So that's why I would say you should probably have at least a general idea of what your major plot points are, even if you are like a pantser kind of person. Number 3, you should have a firm understanding of what a reaction scene and an action scene are. So, in like how that impacts your pacing. So a reaction scene is your character's, shocker, reacting to a specific circumstance, right? And that circumstance is the action. That kind of scene gives your reader and your characters time to relax and plot their next points, and then for the reader in particular, gives them a chance to really digest what just happened, right, in the action scene. And then your action scene are anything that is going to move the plot forward. So it doesn't have to be like an actual fight scene. It could be an espionage scene. It can be a love scene. It could be a what they call like a seduction scene, where somebody is trying to pull somebody else in a direction or a different direction, right? All those kinds of scenes are qualified as action scenes. Now, my last point about this is that you also need to have a good blend of both, and you don't want it to be action, reaction, action, reaction. You want to kind of make it so that it's like action, 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 reaction, maybe another reaction, action, action, reaction. And you want to mix it up that way, because if you do too much action, for instance, at once, then it's going to be way too fast-paced. If you do too many reactions or too long of a reaction, it's going to be too slow-paced. But if you do one and then the other, one and then the other, it actually ends up getting monotonous. So those are the things that you really want to think about as you're doing and plotting out your action and reaction scenes. So number 4, I've talked about this in a different video, but you always want to have parts all the way up until the end, basically, where your character, your main character, is going to fail within the middle of your story, right? The middle of your story is your character getting geared towards the ending, the ultimate climax. And if your character is just succeeding all the way up into the climax in which they also succeed, then it's not going to make for a very good story. You need to have your low points. You need to have your character really, really suffer during the middle of the story in order to make the ending rewarding for not just your main character, but your readers as well. So that's another thing that I think that you should really, really think about as you're writing your comic or your story or what have you. And then finally, this goes with all the points above, but it's also probably one of the most important points for some of you anime nerds out there like myself. You don't have to have filler, and in fact, I'm going to say you should not have filler. Why? Filler, for those of you who don't know, was typically something created by anime in order to fill a gap of time. So it was pretty well known. For instance, Dragon Ball was one of the ones that's really, really famous for this, but the anime quickly caught up to and then almost surpassed where the manga was at. So the anime didn't have really story to go off of in order to properly like create something that was good, right? So what they would do is, or create something that was along with the storyline. So what they would actually do is they would create filler. They would create things so that it would take some time up. So for instance, Akira Toriyama could catch up with his writing and his artwork for the comic or the manga in order to give information and content for the anime. With that being said, the reason why this is an important point for your comic is you don't need that in a comic, right? The only circumstance in which I feel like that could be possibly warranted is if you're doing webtoons and you have like chapters that you're getting ready to come up on that aren't fully fleshed out and all that good stuff, and you want more time, then you can do like a quick short story just to kind of help your audience have like a little bit of like a layover before the next big event comes. But other than that, you don't want to have filler because everything should be moving your plot forward. Nothing should be just there to be there. All the dialogue, everything should be doing something to move the plot. Alright, so hopefully that really is going to help you with your middle of your story. Middles are extremely hard and they're sometimes a little bit monotonous to do because you just want to get to the nitty-gritty of like the big climax and stuff like that in your story. So I do hope that this was extremely helpful for you, and if you stuck around to the end of the video, I really appreciate it. I love all of y'all, and if you haven't, like I said before, if you haven't joined the community, please join the community. I'd really love to have you. Alright, I'm Manga Mike, and I'm out.